Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at blueprints and the passive nature of earning ISK with blueprint originals. So one of my favourite ways of making passive ISK within the game is buying blueprint originals and researching them and then reselling them on the market. So I have done a very basic course on buying blueprints and researching and what you need to look for, etc. So I will link that in the description for anybody that's interested. So the great thing about blueprints is there is a blueprint to suit all price ranges. So from people that have multiple billions of ISK to people that have only hundreds of thousands of ISK. So I've pulled up the contracts currently for the Omen, and as you can see here we've got 4 blueprints currently on contracts for sale. So if we have a look here, we have a blueprint that is 00 MEP 0080 and 1020. Now in order to get the price of the blueprint, I checked the market, and as you can see here we have 114 million, but as we know, the Omen is an Amarian ship and generally isn't available in Caldari space, so we see this with the quantities. So before buying any blueprint, I will jump over onto Eve Marketer just to check out the general cost, and again put in the blueprint and you can see here that the base cost is 82.75 million ISK. So if I was to buy it in Jitter, we're obviously buying quite a markup on this BPO. Now obviously with the separation of Amar and Jitter, it's quite a round robin to get the blueprint over now to Jitter. However, again, it's up to you whether you decide whether you are willing to make the round trip to get it for 82 million or whether 114 million to yourself is reasonable. So for a fully researched one here, we are looking at, so say, 250 million. Now, one of the questions I often get asked is, well, why wouldn't you just research it yourself and save yourself 170 million ISK? And there's numerous reasons to this, but some people can't be bothered with having to wait the weeks that it might take to research the BPO. Some people have enough ISK that it doesn't really bother them paying that kind of markup, and long term the BPOs will hold their value. So it's not as though you're losing money, or the ISK, you're just tying it up in the blueprint itself. So there is a good number of reasons why people would pay just straight off to get the blueprint and not bother doing the research themselves. So first of all, we've checked the contracts to make sure that the market isn't heavily saturated with omens. We've then checked the price on an external site to find the base costs, and now I'm looking at trying to work out how much ISK per hour I'm going to make if I decide to buy this. So as normal, most of my research is done at Tama, and this one will be no different. So again, let's see how long it's going to take. So it will take 52 days and it's going to cost me 20 million ISK. Now that is again for ME and PE. So that's going to take me 104 days and it's going to cost me 40 million ISK. So let's work that out. So the base cost was 80 million ISK plus 40 million ISK for the ME and the PE equals 120 million ISK. They are currently selling for 250 million, which gives us 130 million ISK profit, assuming it sells at that, and that is over the course of 104 days. So that gives us 1.25 million ISK a day. If I divide that by 24 hours, it's given us a grand total of 52,000 ISK per hour for that slot, which all in all is a little low. However, the reasonable amount of ISK that it is for these cruiser blueprints, it's not bad whatsoever. Again, you can quite easily have 10 of them running and you'll be making 520 million ISK an hour or 12 million ISK a day. So it's relatively reasonable. Yes, there's a little bit of tax take off that when you put it on contracts, but it's relatively marginal, the amount that you'll have to pay on tax for when it comes to selling on contracts. Now the nice thing about cruisers are they're usually in decent amount of demand for the blueprints. Obviously there are bigger blueprints which will take a longer to research, etc., and cost you more, like battleships, etc., or you can go down to frigates which will obviously research a lot quicker, but again you have the problem then that potentially you may flood the market if you are researching them quick enough. Also, if you're just getting going, etc., I wouldn't ever advocate going out and buying 10 of the same blueprint unless you know the market. So for instance, cruisers, I would buy some caracals, some vexers, some omens, etc., and mix it up a bit instead of having 10 of all the same ship. Have 2 or 3 of the same blueprints, etc., doing exactly what we've just done to try and work out whether, again, it's worth actually doing it. So not all BPOs function exactly the same, so getting them up to ME10, PE20, it doesn't always make a difference, and I think we'll prove that we're here with the Astrahus. So as you can see here with the Astrahus, in order to do one run, we will need one of these, one, 1, but on the end one here we need 4 structure market networks. So on the surface, if we change the ME here up to 10, it makes no difference. So it's still going to cost us 1 of everything and 4 of the structure market networks. And so with this blueprint, if we change the ME up to 10, as we can see here, it's made no difference to the minerals that we need. We still need 4 of the structural market networks and 1 of everything else. So if we go to contracts and have a look at current blueprints here, see that we've got a ME0 PE10 and we have one here ME9 ME10. Now I've just discovered that putting it up to ME10 makes no difference, so let's have a look to see how much it would have cost to take it to ME9, and we are looking at a substantial amount of ISK and time. So we're taking 134 days and 600 million ISK to get that to ME9. Ha! What a waste. You've basically just spent as much as it was pretty much by the blueprint itself on wasted research. However, that isn't entirely accurate, and again this is why for some BPOs that use components instead of raw minerals, it's worth checking the ME numbers out before doing the necessary research. So with this, as we've just discovered, that if we change it to ME10, we still need 111 and 4 on the end. However, the more runs we do of something, so we've got 4 plus 4 because we're doing 2 runs, so equals 8. However, when we go over to the next run, which is 3, instead of going to 12, we're now at 11. And although that's only saving 1 item, that item itself is worth 114 million ISK. So for every 3 Astrahuses we are building, assuming it's ME10, we are saving 114 million ISK. So here we are, we're in perimeter, and we've got the ME9 PE10, which is what the blueprint had that we were looking at, and as you can see here we've got 29. Now it's worth having a play around to see if where you are manufacturing will make a difference. So from ME9, if we take that up to ME10, as you can see, we will save 1 item. So potentially getting it to 10 would have been or could be worthwhile depending on how many of these you are planning to build. Now as we take the ME down, as you can see here, there is no change until we get from 6 to 7. So from 7 to 9 in the perimeter production facility, there is no change to this, the amount of items needed here. So again, just before you are thinking of buying something for that is a high ME, it's worth taking a look just to see whether the extra ME that you are buying or paying as a premium on the blueprint is actually gaining you anything for it. So ME9 looks decent on paper, but it's giving you no more than what ME7 would have done. So obviously the time that it would take you to research it to ME10 versus ME7 is pretty substantial. So we've got 30 days versus 173 days, and again, depending where they did it, 2.6 billion ISK. So if you are in the market for a BPO, then it is worth doing a little bit of research instead of just blindly buying something with the highest ME, because again, that ME may not actually make a blind bit of difference in the end. And as somebody doing the research on a blueprint, it's worth, so say, taking that little bit of extra time and seeing whether it is actually worth doing the extra bit of research on there, because all you're doing is pouring more time, ISK, into a blueprint which may actually yield no extra results for the end buyer. Now obviously if the end buyer is ignorant to the fact that obviously that will change, then great days, but obviously not everybody will be, and so therefore you are limiting potentially the amount of potential customers that you would have by doing that. So another one of the statements that often gets said is that, well, you know, I could research the Omen BPO and it may not sell. Well, it will sell. It's only a matter of time till it sells, assuming the market isn't heavily saturated. But even if it is heavily saturated, then you can still make the sale. You will just get less for it. The research and that the value has already been added by you to the blueprint in the end, and so therefore the only reason it won't sell in the end is if you are being too greedy. So if you were the only person who currently had an Omen that was researched and you put it on for 2 billion ISK because, well, there's no more on there, then there's a high likelihood that it's never going to sell, because nobody is going to pay that, because as we said at the start, the blueprints hold their value, but they don't hold their value if they are horrifically overvalued. And so that comes back down to valuing your time and research slots properly. So between 50 and 200,000 ISK an hour is probably what you want to be aiming at for mostly under capital BPOs. As you start getting into the higher realms for Titans and super caps, then that value can change. But if you are looking for sub-capital stuff, then you are looking about 50,000 to 200,000 ISK per hour per slot. Now obviously you can go higher, and if you are the only person in the area at the time doing the selling, then you can potentially command slightly more, but again, you're going to have to be careful not to overvalue your blueprints, because all that's going to happen is yours is going to sit there, other people are going to do research on them and they're going to come in lower, and basically yours is just going to sit there and more than likely never sell. And at the very end of the day, you have a BPO which has a value, it has a lower base value because it's what the NPCs sell it for. So other than somebody coming in trying to get a quick sale, the Omen, as we established at the start, is 80 million ISK or 82 million ISK. So no matter what you do to the BPO, it will always have that intrinsic base value to it, unless someone again is trying to sell it quickly, or again usually if it's a super capital Titan, etc., or Astrahus. So even if you do the research on it, you will never find that you will lose a great deal of ISK, even if and when it comes to selling it, even in a very heavily saturated market. It will always go for roughly, at the very least, the base value, and you've just lost the time of what you've put into the BPO in the end. And when you do get to the point where you come to sell the BPO, at the end of doing the research, if you find that the market is all of a sudden heavily saturated for whatever reason, then potentially you could always just run copies from it until the market desaturates, unsaturates, and that way you are putting the BPO to some use. You are gaining some copies which can therefore be sold or can be used in order to make products later on, and when again there is a point when you can relist the BPO to sell, then obviously you can do it that way. And with that, I think we'll wrap the video up there. If you've got this far and haven't subscribed, then please think about it. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment on anything that you wish. I will do my best to answer whatever questions are asked. And with that, fly safe, and I'll talk to you soon.